Donald Trump's economic agenda for his first 100 days includes extending his tax cuts and imposing tariffs on imports. However, the Congressional Budget Office says extending the 2017 Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act could cost the economy more than $3 trillion over the next decade. Also, critics argue increased tariffs could cost the average middle-income consumer between $1,700 and $7,600 per year. Well, here to set us straight is Young Voices commentator, author, Texas Tech Associate Professor of Economics, Alexander Salter. Alexander, 75 million Americans voted to elect Donald Trump to a second term, and many are wondering how his proposed changes may affect the economy. So first, extending those 2017 tax cuts, want more money in consumer pockets, really help the economy out? What do you think?
I think people voted the way they voted because they're fed up with the high cost of living. And I think that there's a lot in the president-elect's agenda that's going to help address that by increasing the supply side of the economy. I like the idea of extending tax cuts. I like the idea of deregulation. All those things are going to make the economy more productive, which should mean that we see wages growing faster as the economy grows faster. And so while I think we also have to worry about perhaps tariffs raising the prices of specific goods and services for American consumers, you have to combine that with the other effects of Trump's economic plans that I think are a definite win for most Americans.
Well, let's get into that on the tariffs. I mean, he wants to increase tariffs on imported goods as much as 60% on China, 25% on Mexico. So what are your thoughts on increasing tariffs? Would it cost the average American, the households, thousands of dollars per year in higher cost goods? What?
Tariffs are a tax. There's no way getting around that. They do what they're designed to do, which is raise prices for consumers. Presumably, the whole goal is to deter consuming imports and to switch to consuming more American-made and manufactured goods. But there are real economic costs to that. The economic costs are that Americans are going to pay more out of pocket to get the goods and services that they want. What I don't think that tariffs will result in is sustained inflation of the kind that we saw in the COVID years. Americans have gotten used to dollar depreciation to the tune of 2 to 4% every year for the last 60 years. I don't really see Trump's economic agenda on the trade and protectionism angle contributing to an inflationary spiral. You should see prices rise pretty quickly, but once they rise to a new level, I don't think that we'll see much price growth beyond that.
During the campaign, Trump talked about eliminating the income tax and relying on tariffs for revenue like the country did pre-World War I. Could we do away with the federal income tax, and how would that work?
Not without greatly reducing federal spending. Taxing imports alone with tariffs would maybe raise 20% of the revenue at most that you could expect to fund government at its current levels. Now, the president-elect has promised to pare back government, but I don't think that he's going to pare it back so much that we can ditch the income tax system and replace it with a tariff-only system. I think the best way of understanding those remarks during the campaign were as an attempt to build an electoral coalition. It's one of those things that sounds really good and signals priorities, but I don't think that it's going to be something that we can seriously economically pursue. We still have to worry about the deficit. We're already spending much more money than we're taking in terms of federal revenue, and eventually that's going to come back to bite us. I hope that the Trump administration will do something about the deficit by slashing spending in addition to taxes. But if the record of the first administration is anything to go by, I think Republicans like deficit spending too, unfortunately.
Well, I know you believe cutting government spending is the best way to get inflation under control for the long term. And Trump has suggested a new government department, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So what do you think of that idea? And Elon Musk saying he can eliminate $2 trillion in government waste. Would that help?
Elon Musk as an efficiency czar is a very interesting idea. And if there really is $2 trillion worth of fat in federal expenditures, I'm all for trimming it. The question is, when push comes to shove, can you really swallow the political pill of pulling funding from interest groups that are going to raise a stink when their funding dries up? I guess the silver lining is that President-elect Trump is term limited. There cannot be a third Trump administration, so he doesn't have to worry about re-election. Maybe he's going to be willing to bite the bullet and actually do what's necessary to support paring back those revenues. But it's something that's very difficult to do. I'm not sure that we're going to get $2 trillion worth of cuts, but I certainly wouldn't mind any little bit, because ultimately what we have to do is bring the rate of growth of government spending below the rate of growth of the real economy. As long as we're producing new goods and services faster than we're increasing federal expenditures, that by itself is going to go a long way to repairing America's broken fiscal house.
And a lot of entitlements there that are hard to touch. Okay, Alexander Salter, author, commentator, Texas Tech Associate Professor of Economics. Thank you for setting us straight with your pre-Trump administration insights today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.